evening and welcome to the All Portable Discussion Zone, a bi-weekly live stream all about amateur radio portable ops. My name is Charlie. My call sign is November Juliet 7 Victor. And with me this evening is one of the two co-hosts for the show, Dan, at KC7MSU. And we also have our guest tonight, Scott, N4AAJ. That's Alpha Alpha Juliet. Also, a warm welcome to those of you who are watching live in the chat. If you have a comment or a question, go ahead and drop that in the chat window, and we'll try our best to respond. We'll probably leave a little time in between and at the end so we can address some of those comments and questions. And don't forget that this show is converted to a podcast and is available about 24 hours after the show. And let me just apologize for the not bringing up the podcast for last week's podcast. It's still in the can, and I haven't put it up on the podcast, whatever it is, the podcast page. So that's coming yet. So I'll put up that one and this one shortly. Okay, let's get caught up and see what's been going on with everybody. And let's take it over to Dan first and see what you got going on.
Helps if you unmute. Well, let's see. This week, as far as ham radio stuff, I got to play with some Atlas HF gear, Atlas 350 rig that had some issues. So I got to play around with that a little bit and do a little bit of very minor repair work on that. And that seems to be working now. So I'm pretty happy that I was able to get that going. Also kind of stringing up some a new antenna in the backyard, so I've kind of been playing with that also, and I'm hoping that I can get out of town next weekend. So I've been kind of trying to do some planning. I'm kind of a creature of habit there, and so we're thinking about trying a couple new peaks. I've been looking around Flagstaff, and so kind of pre-planning to get out of town next week since this was a holiday weekend.
Yeah, good. Sounds like you got some good stuff going on, Dan. Some good fun stuff. Yes, for me, since last week when we had the podcast, the show with Simon, which was a great show. The following Wednesday, I went out and did a mini morning madness adventure where I got on top of Scarlet Mountain and did some HF as well as some VHF contacts early in the morning, and so that was a good activation. Then the following morning, early 4th of July, Sandy and I left town and went the back route around the way most people don't go to Sholo. Had a hotel there where we stayed for 3 days. We did 3 days of SOTA, just 2 summits per day. And so we got 60 points, had a great time, met up with our good friend Chris, N1CLC, the ham ninja. Ham radio ninja. He was up there, and we went to his cabin for a minute and visited with him, had some lunch with him. It was a good time. And so, that's kind of what we've been doing. And then coming up for me is next weekend is the HamCon Zion Hamfest. And I'm looking forward to that. It's a new Hamfest that hasn't been, this is its first year, but I'm especially looking forward to it because our friends, our YouTube friends, I don't know everybody that's going to be there, but our YouTube friends, Ham Radio 2.0, who comes on right after this show, will be there. Frank, the Tank Radio, will be there. And we've got Alpha 0Z, Kyle will be there. They're all kind of heading up that direction and eventually end up at Yellowstone. I actually dropped out of that trip, and I'm just going to spend time with family up there. But so it's been a busy summer for sure. All right, guys, let's see what our guest Scott has been up to the last little bit. I'm sure quite a bit.
Hey, everybody. So I have been back to work since June 3rd and jonesing to get out and play radio a little bit. So Friday I got out and activated one of my closest SOTA summits. I've already activated it this year, but it turns out that it's a POTA as well. So nice. I was able to kind of do a twofer for that. I like to go out and, I'm fine with reactivating summits, even though I don't get the points for it. I enjoy just activating and getting out there and doing summit to summits, and then just, feeding the chasers too. That's a blast. So turns out, this one was a lot of fun. I got to get up there and make a few summit to summits, and I missed a couple of summits to summits I wanted. I tried to get Charlie, but propagation wouldn't cooperate. And I think one of the highlights of it was there's a kid named Forrest who I just started watching on YouTube recently. He's KI7QCF, and he has got just amazing energy. And I actually worked him the first time, and I called him park to park. So that was a blast. And then cool. Saturday, I went out and activated the Daniel Boone National Forest. I went to Red River Gorge, which is one of my favorite hiking spots, about an hour and 15 minutes from the house. And believe it or not, I had never activated Daniel Boone National Forest, despite having actually thru-hiked the Sheltoy Trace trail, which goes from one end of the park to the other. It's 343 miles. And so I got to get out and hike a little bit and then activate the park. And that was a lot of fun. I was also trying out a new, to me, FT818. That happens to be, that's my favorite portable rig, despite, I've got a KX3 and a KH1 and several different portable rigs, but for some reason I love that 818, and so much that I ended up wanting to get a backup for it. So I took the backup out and put it through its paces and had a good time with that. And then today or Sunday, I talked Betsy into going out to activate a couple of parks. We got two new parks, the Perryville Battlefield and was it Isaac Shelby Cemetery. I had to look it up again because I'd forgotten the name of it. But we actually just got back from that about 30 minutes ago. So it's been nice. It's been a busy weekend.
Yeah, busy weekend indeed. But that sounds like so much fun doing all those things. A lot of adventure in there. You mentioned the 818. Sandy has tried a few other radios. We have an 817 we use all the time. She's sideband only, and the main reason we went up to Sholo was to see if we can get her more points, get her closer to her mountain goat. She's now 3/4 of the way there, 750 something points. But
nice.
She says, she says that the 817 sounds better than any of the other radios she's tried. She likes the audio in it better, and so she's sticking with that. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
cool. All right, so let's dive in and ask you a few questions, Scott. I mean, it's obvious since you just kind of give your little round robin thing that you are very active in both POTA and SOTA, and in getting out there and moving those feet. So let's talk a little bit about that. But let's back up just a little bit and let's hear about where you are from originally. Maybe a little about your background growing up, and then what you do for work.
Okay, sure. Let's see. I've spent the majority of my time in Kentucky. I was born in Louisiana. I lived in Colorado for a little while, Tennessee, and then I think it was my freshman year in high school. We moved to Kentucky and have been there most of the time since. And my background as far as work goes, I'm a software engineer. It still kind of blows me away to think about that, but
Where'd you go to school?
I graduated with a BS in computer science in 2012, so it's my second career. Originally I did auto body repair, and I've done all sorts of things. I had a childhood fascination with tractor trailers, and so I got out and drove a truck for a little while. And I think that is one of the most underappreciated jobs in the world, and frankly, super important job. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So
cool.
Let's see. Did I miss anything?
No, that's good. That's good. So let's talk now a little bit about. The reason we got you on here is because of the amazing things that you've accomplished, right? And so just giving them a little bit of background. And now we want to try to talk a little bit about some of these accomplishments that you've done. I know a lot of people don't, they don't like to brag about their accomplishments and stuff like that. But I think that in your specific situation, you have enough experience that you have some things that you can share to help people improve their SOTA skills, as well as backpacking and through hiking. So I want to talk a little bit. First of all, ask you to lay a little background on your hike through the Appalachian Trail, and how you prepared for that and what it involved.
Okay, so I've been just a day hiker, I guess, my entire life. It started way back. I think it was in middle school when I was in Colorado. I had a friend who introduced me to the outdoors. I was a really lazy kid, but he was a little bit older, and I just wanted to go and do things. He was my only friend for miles around. And I'm really fortunate to have that experience. He got me hooked on the outdoors, and so I've hiked my entire life. I did a whole lot of backpacking when I was a kid, and then through adult years, I just got really busy with life, and it just kind of slid to the back burner. And let's see, I think it was around 2015, something like that. I was watching YouTube videos, and I started watching this guy, Evan's backpacking videos, and I watched him for quite some time. And I watched him, all the things that he learned, and along the way, he thru hiked the Sheltowee Trace, and I knew he was building up to something. And he finally announced that he was going to thru hike the Appalachian Trail, and so he did that in 2018. And I watched him, and it became like a soap opera. I had to watch it every single day, and then I started watching multiple people in parallel. And then basically I just decided I have to do this. I have to accomplish this for myself. And I, started going out and backpacking pretty much every weekend, mainly in the Red River Gorge, and just kind of honed in my skills. And I watched every video imaginable about ultralight backpacking. And so probably Evan, and there's a guy named Jupiter Hikes. He's where I really learned from him, and was really able to hone my kit in. And I saved up for several years, and eventually got to where I could thru hike the Appalachian Trail myself. And in 2021, I asked for a sabbatical from work, and I had planned to northbound thru hike the AT. And so in prep for that, I did a shorter trail, which was the Foothills Trail in South Carolina, North Carolina. It's 77 miles, and the terrain is a good representation of what the lower part of the Appalachian Trail is like. So that was my first real thru hike, and it took me a full week to do it. And I was able, I learned a few things along the way. And then 2021, I set out April 1st to do a northbound thru hike of the Appalachian Trail. And I started off doing I think 8 miles a day, something like that, and eventually worked my way up to about 15. And it was a learning experience. You get out there and you're gung ho, and that trail is 2,198 miles. I think it's a little shorter than that now, because every year it changes just a little bit.
The Appalachian Trail. Yes.
And I got out there, and I learned a lot about myself.
Yeah.
One of the things that I learned is that after probably about 500 or so miles, I'm actually done hiking, and I can take it in short spurts. But I discovered that I don't have, I could do it, but I start to lose the enjoyment after about 500 miles. And so I ended up, I northbounded, I started and did the approach trail to Springer Mountain, which is 8 miles. And then I did, I left from Springer Mountain, and I went 780 something miles to the James River Footbridge in Virginia. And I got off trail. my wife was, in the lower part of the trail, she was meeting me every other week, every other weekend, which was fantastic, but it wasn't very good for my thru hike. It was a huge distraction. So
Yeah.
I ended up, she and I got married in 2020. So she kind of got the thru hike as part of the deal. She wasn't crazy about it, but I just told her, I said, this is something I'm going to do, take it or leave it. And she's been great about it. And, so I got to the James River footbridge on, right around June 6th, which is our anniversary. And I met her in Lexington, Virginia, actually. And then we spent a few days off trail, and I kind of decided at that point that I either needed to quit the hike, or I was actually pretty far behind schedule.
Yeah.
And for anybody who doesn't know, if you do a northbound thru hike, they close Mount Katahdin or Baxter State Park. They close it. I think it's around October 11th. So that's kind of the cutoff for going northbound. They close it due to weather. So what I decided to do was turn it into a flip-flop hike. And I ended up going home, and I was home for like 3 weeks. I ended up, I'm sorry, I'll try and keep it as short as possible, but there's a lot. So this was 2021 still, right? Went home, found out that I ended up having Lyme disease.
Oh, wow.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I got the second COVID shot, and there's something about that shot, it just ramped up my immune system, and I already had Lyme disease. I just didn't know it, and it came out, within a few days of getting home, and just 24 hours after taking that shot. And I ended up getting, treated for that. I spent about 3 weeks at home. I went back out, and when I went back out, I flew to Maine and was going to take the deadline off the hike, just go ahead and summit Katahdin and then turn it into a southbound hike and then come all the way back down to Virginia. So what happened is I ended up going 188 miles south. I went to Stratton, Maine, and then ended up deciding to come home.
Yeah.
So I was pretty disgusted with myself for that. And as far as it relates to SOTA, I'll have to fill in the blanks there, because at that point I wasn't actually doing SOTA or ham radio.
Well, yeah. You know what? That leads me into just this real quick question here.
Yes.
N4AAJ, Jim, ham on a bike. We all know him. He says, Scott, have you done any SOTA trips with Mike, N4DCW? So we'll have to get to that too, right?
Yes. Michael's actually one of my good friends, and I met him on my as a result of my first summit. So we'll definitely have to talk about that.
Cool.
All right. So 2021, in all I did 975 miles. I was pretty disgusted with myself, came home, and then I went back to work, and I can't really leave something like that undone. So 2022, I worked, and then I thru hiked the Sheltowee Trace. And in January of 2022 is when I basically re-entered ham radio. So let me fill in that little spot right there, and then we'll go on.
Sure.
Okay, so I was originally licensed in 2005, and in 2015, my license expired. Yeah, I was really active in the beginning, and then life, college, kids, all sorts of things were going on, and it kind of fell to the back burner. And I think the main thing was that the QTH I was in, we had big power lines that ran right through the yard, and I just,
that's a killer.
I wasn't going to put up a tower or anything there, but something really important that happened during that time frame was I watched one of Steve WG0AT,
Yep.
his early videos on SOTA, and that just intrigued me. I was like, man, that's awesome. Taking a low powered radio to the top of a mountain, that's got to be phenomenal. So that just stuck with me, and I continued watching his videos periodically. And then, I kind of got distracted and got away from ham radio. Well, fast forward back to 2022. Okay, I've got, a big portion of the Appalachian Trail done. And it was in January of 2022, I got the bug again. And I started thinking about an old friend that I used to talk to on the radio. And I thought, I need to check on him. I wonder what's going on with him. And it was just a snowball effect. I checked in with him and everything was good. And he was thriving. And then I got into, I got right back into it. And in April of 2022, I was just looking back at my activations. In April of 2022 is when I basically connected all the dots and did my first summit. And I decided to focus this time. I decided to focus purely on CW because that's one of the hardest things I have ever learned. Believe it or not, there's just something about the way my brain is wired. I'm a visual learner, and and for whatever reason, I'm not a very good listener either. And so, all those things, yeah, all those things made CW difficult for me. So I decided coming back that I was just going to focus purely on CW and put all my effort there. So I ended up doing my first SOTA activation on it's called the Pinnacles or Indian Fort Mountain, which is about 30 miles south of here. And I actually had an 818 for my first activation. I had an in-fed half wave, and I didn't even realize it, but I was only running 2.5 watts because I didn't understand the power settings.
Right. Yeah, I've made that mistake myself. Where if it shows the max, like there's like 3 little indicators, this kind of like levels, and then like the biggest one, that's 5. No, that's 2.5. Nothing. If it doesn't show anything on the F817, that's when it's a highest power, right?
Yep.
So I made that mistake.
So one thing that totally blew me away was how quick I started getting contacts once I posted, and I ended up working Christian F4WBN on my first activation. And it took, he had to send his call a few times before I could get it through my head that it was an F4, not a W or N or K. And then I went home and I was just blown away, and it got me hooked even more. Well, on the way back to the truck from that summit, I was talking on 2 meters, and I don't know if you know N4GO.
I've worked him many times.
Yeah. Oh, he's a good friend as well, and he told me that I should email Michael and get to know him, and I did. N4DCW. Well, it turns out Michael is the SOTA association manager for Kentucky, and we kind of hit it off, and he was super helpful about any questions that I had and getting me going, and then later on he invited me to go to one of the W4 SOTA campouts in Georgia.
Oh, fun!
And that was huge. Because I got to meet, a lot of the W4 SOTA community and had a blast. And I took Betsy along. And this is the key. This is how to get, if anybody out there wants to get your wife into ham radio, this is how I did it. But I got her to go camping, and then we would get on summit. And during those campouts, you've got a high concentration of people on summits close in. So you basically have a summit to summit party, and a lot of it is on VHF and voice. So, she had heard me activate a couple times before then and just wasn't interested, but she heard YLs, and she heard, there was an entire family there that had their license, and they were all having a blast. And I asked her to start logging for me.
There you go.
And I got her involved, and she just had a great time on that camp out. And she asked me afterwards, she said, "Hey, do I have to learn Morse code to get a ham radio license?" And I was like, "No." I said, "You don't ever have to learn Morse code if you don't want to." She said, "Then I'm in." I said, "Okay, fantastic." And it took a while. She's one of those that needs a deadline to accomplish something.
Yeah.
And so I think it was the Virginia camp out the next spring, and just a few weeks before the camp out, she started studying like a mad woman, got her ticket, and ended up getting to make a bunch of contacts and had a blast at the camp out. And then the same motivation has gotten her all the way to extra.
Nice. That's an
and
accomplishment.
And one thing that blew me away, you know, I thought at first she was just kind of doing the hobby for me, really. And then when I was away in 2023, I've got to come back and get back on that story. But in 2023, while I was away, I showed her how to, I've got an FTDX 3000 at home, and showed her how to operate it, and had a end-fed random wire out in the yard, showed her how to tune it up and everything. And when I came home, she had filled a logbook with POTA contacts.
Wow.
She absolutely loves chasing POTA. And so it's been a blast to have her involved.
That's great. That's a great story.
So, okay. Where did I leave off? 2022.
You were just the first hike at the top of up in Maine, right?
Yes. Okay. So 2022, I worked, got back into ham radio, and I ended up through hiking the Sheltowee Trace. There weren't any summits on the Sheltowee Trace, so I didn't do anything there. Okay. And then 2023, my plan was to, oh, that's Betsy right there, actually. Yep. Oh, you just made a link.
Yeah.
Anyways,
she says all that work to hike to the top of a summit, and just having to watch them as was a big push. She said, I had to get my license and have fun too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, 2023, my plans were still, you know, I still had this aching need to finish the Appalachian Trail, even though I had hiked enough really that I was okay with just quitting. I can't leave something like that undone. So this time I set out to do it southbound and just do the entire thing. And the reason why was the southbound is a little different experience. It's a little more private, you know, because the majority of people go northbound, and it's harder going south. I think you kind of get you get a lot of the big stuff right in the beginning, and I wanted to do SOTA along the trail. So one of the key things that contributed to doing SOTA along the trail happened at the Virginia campout in 2022. I was talking to Ariel, NY4G.
Yeah, I know.
And talking about, yeah, Ariel's great. And I was talking to him about this idea, and he told me that he had a document containing basically all of the AT summits that are within, you know, I don't remember, a quarter mile or something like that from the trail. And K2JB, Dean, had originally created this document, and then NY4G came back and he kind of dressed it up a little bit, and and he said, let me get that to you. You can download Dean's version online. It's, if you just search for SOTA summits along the Appalachian Trail, you can probably find it pretty easy, or I can provide a link for it or whatever. But Ariel sent me this file, and so it made it that much easier to do SOTA along the trail. So I set out to go southbound in 2023 and just activate as many summits as I could, but SOTA was still kind of a secondary activity to thru hiking. That was my main goal, was to thru hike. So I got out there, and I brought the KX2. You know, I went through all the radios that existed at the time, and that was just the right choice for the flexibility and frequency, and you know, everything's integrated into one nice little package. And my favorite portable antenna is an end-fed random wire, and I like to just connect it straight to the tuner, no coax involved. It's nice and simple and efficient.
Right.
So it worked out. That's, you know, I had it down to I've actually got a picture of my kit up here.
Yeah, let's share the screen while you're doing that. I just say hello to Chuck and Sue, our good friends. Thanks for being here. And yeah, just click present to share the screen.
Yeah. Okay.
Vince is in here. Thanks, Vince. He says +1 to Scout 45's comment, or sorry, Scout 75's comment. It says so. Scout 75 says that Christian And Scott 35 is Shane, KD9NJJ. He says that Christian Foxtrot 4 Whiskey Bravo November was a major factor for getting hooked on radio. He still giggles with excitement when he gets in contact with him. Yeah.
Yeah, I have the same feeling every time I hear him.
Yeah. And there's Brian, good friend Brian. Thanks for being here as well again. All right, let's pop that up.
So I narrowed it down, and this was my kit that I took on the Appalachian Trail. I had to get it as minimal as possible and as flexible as possible. So with the KX2 and the infed random wire, I use an 84-foot version of the infed random wire, which gives me basically 80 through 10 capabilities with the KX2. In some cases, I needed a 9-to-1 unun because like 40 meters and 60 meters were kind of difficult to tune without it. So that's one of Josh Tuflin. That's one of his 9-to-1 ununs. And then as far as the battery goes, I had, the internal battery for the KX2, and I opted not to bring it because the charger was so big. I didn't have the charging option then. And so I ended up with a talent cell just strictly because of the capacity and the ease of use, and the charger was so small and light. And since I've actually improved this kit even more with one of Josh's, phone chargers. He's got a phone. It'll take USB-C and convert it to 12 volts.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, I got my kit down to this for the AT, and I started June 1st on Mount Katahdin and went south. And when I'm used to activating in the, in the east, and there's trees on all the summits in the southeast. So when I got up there, Mount Katahdin, of course, you get above tree line, and there are no trees. So I kind of freaked out at first, and I was like, man, I don't know what to do, but I want to activate this summit because this is the beginning of the hike. I got to do this. So what I ended up doing was I just threw my wire down on the ground, and it's all granite up there. And to my amazement, I actually ended up working Christian, and I think S57S, and another European station, plus the guys in North Carolina that were chasing me, and it worked really well. I ended up employing that trick several other times, like on Mount Washington. So am I still sharing? Yeah.
I brought it down while you were talking, but I can put it back up. By the way,
okay.
do you know AE9Q, by the way? He said this. Did you buy the radio from him?
I did. Yep. I bought one FT818 from him, and then I recently bought another one just like last week. Yep.
He's listening. He says hello.
Oh, fantastic.
And
hey,
glad that
Dave.
you're enjoying the 818. Yeah.
Dave. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. The one I'm having a lot of fun with the one I got from him. So so as far as the AT goes, I ended up for SOTA, the W1, the Northeast is an absolute playground for SOTA. There's 10 pointers everywhere. And I had a blast coming down through there. And basically what I would do is if I didn't have time, or it was pouring rain, or there was some kind of, major impediment, then I just would skip the peak. And later on the hike, I kind of regretted that, because I ended up doing 50 something summits. And I had guys that were regularly chasing me, and it was a blast. I tried to work at least 2 bands every single time, but a lot of times my goal ended up being to get set up, activate, and move on and do it all within an hour. Mm-hmm. Because I like to sit down and operate for as long as I possibly can.
Exactly.
But basically I had Betsy, motivating me to get home as fast as possible. And she's like, you gotta shorten these activations and get this done and out of there, so
that's understandable. Hey, Dan, did you try to work him at all?
No, huh?
Yeah, well, I tried all the time. I don't think I only got one contact with you. It's just the propagation out here to Arizona from you. It wasn't the greatest, I guess.
Yeah, and it changes through the year, but so I talked about basically what I discovered about myself, and through hiking. So kind of the same pattern repeated itself. I went south and I was having a blast with SOTA, and the SOTA became more fun than the hike, and that
Okay.
kind of kept me going. And I was coming up to Bear Mountain, and then there was going to be a stretch through Pennsylvania, and there was a stretch of like 300 miles that were only 1 to 6 point summits, and they were really spread out. And I started getting kind of bummed. And the problem with sticking with the through hike is that it's so easy to go home. I could literally just jump in a rental car and and head home. And when you're out there and you miss all the basics, things are just things become, you just have a huge appreciation for all the little things like French fries or a shower or the ones you love, obviously. um, and it kind of got to me. I ended up I went 787 miles, and it's kind of funny because northbound it was 780 something miles where I
Wow.
hit that same
Wow.
point. So southbound I hit it at 787. I ended up going home. And I was, again, once I got home and I was home for a little while, I got disgusted with myself. And I'm like, man, I've got to get this thing done. And I went back out and I was going to hike from Harper's Ferry and kind of um, connect back down to Glasgow, Virginia. So that was like, I think it was 205 miles. And I got out there, and of course I took my radio. I was really excited to get to activate in the Shenandoah. And I ended up hiking most of the Shenandoah. I think I did right at 100 or 105 miles. I went home again. And so then, I was pretty down about not finishing the hike. And so I went back out this spring, and I started at Bear Mountain. And this time, since I was starting with that 300-mile stretch of, just a few summits, I decided to leave the radio at home, unfortunately. And, I needed to get out there and get it done as quick as possible. And I had a talk with my boss, and I made a commitment about when I would be finished with the trail and return to work, um, so he could count on me. And so I kind of needed to get it done as quick as possible. And I got out there and I started at Bear Mountain, and then I hiked down to Harper's Ferry. That was 385 miles. And then I went home for the weekend and came back out because I was skipping the 105 miles through the Shenandoah that I had already hiked. So I came back out and then jumped back down to the bottom of the Shenandoah. And I decided at that point to, let's see, I did bring a radio for the last little bit. No, I didn't. I'm sorry. I was in, such a rush to get done. I didn't bring the radio for the last little bit. I wanted to just charge through it and get done. And ended up hiking, like I said, from the bottom of the Shenandoah all the way down to Glasgow. And I finished the AT on May 14th at the James River Footbridge.
Nice.
And
I bet that felt good.
Oh, it did, because basically since 2021 it's just been tearing me up that I didn't do it. Most people are they're I don't know, 2,500, 3,000, maybe more than that, people that begin the trail every year, and it's increasing every year too. And there's only about a quarter of the people who start that actually finish it. And of course, when I went out there in the beginning, I was like, I'm not going to be one of those people, and it got me.
Yeah.
It got me. That's a lot of trail, and I had never experienced anything like that before.
Okay.
But
well, so there's some questions we have for you. Is that the story, the short of it, I guess, so to speak?
Oh yeah.
I'm sure there was more to it than that, but that's kind of the culmination and everything. You were done with the AT, and then what happened?
So I went back to work, and I've been jonesing to get back on the air, ever since, and to get back out there and hike. So I've been going, every chance I get.
Cool.
But right now I'm at the point where I've activated everything, within reasonable driving distance around me. So I'm going to have to start making longer trips. But
so what does reasonable distance mean to you?
So say 3 hours.
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
about right.
Yep.
3 hours each way, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So one thing that I've got coming up soon to look forward to is not this weekend, but the next, is the W4T SOTA camp out in Tennessee.
Oh, cool.
Betsy and I have a campsite, and we're looking forward to going and doing that one. It's going to be in the Roan Highlands area, which is it's one of my favorite parts of the AT. It used to be my favorite part until I went to the White Mountains, and the White Mountains take the cake. They're just unbelievable.
Yeah. Where are they at in Maine?
The White Mountains, they start in southern Maine and then New Hampshire.
Yeah.
So, that's something else. One of the highlights of being in the Northeast, and having met Bob AC1Z.
Yes.
I met him at the Virginia campout. I ended up getting to do an activation with him in New Hampshire. And I also met Fred WX1S, and I met Fred by chance. I was coming into Wildcat. My wife was posting on the SOTA reflector kind of where I was. I think Fred probably knew roughly where I was, but us meeting was just really, really cool. I was coming into Wildcat Summit to do an activation, and I kind of walked off the AT back into this little nook in the woods, and this guy's taking down an antenna. And I said, "Wait, are you activating SOTA?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Are you Scott?" And I said, "I am." And so
He recognized you by name.
yeah. So we met, and then we ended up doing several activations together along the trail, because he's those guys are very fortunate to live up there. And Fred ended up doing trail magic for me and a few other hikers, and that was a really awesome experience.
Got to unmute myself. Okay, cool. All right, so let me throw this out to you guys in chat. We're at the point now where we're going to start asking some questions. You guys in chat, if you have anything for Scott, any questions or comments, we'll get to those now. And I do have some follow-up questions myself. And whoa, we just lost Scott, so we'll have to. He'll be back, I'm sure. I'm sure he clicked the wrong button. There he is.
Charlie, wrong button.
That's what I was telling everybody. You probably just click the wrong button. All right, so I want to know what your trail name is.
Oh boy.
Tell us about that.
Okay, I was hoping this wouldn't come up.
Hey, I remember when we were before the show started, I said, "Is there anything that's off limits?" And you said, "No."
Yeah. Okay, my trail name I got in 2021, and it's Shoes on the Trail, and that's a pretty boring name except for the irony involved. So since about 2015 or so, I have been experimenting with barefoot running and hiking, and I got to where I've pretty much the only time these days I ever wear footwear is when I'm in public, and I wear sandals. I've gone to my corporate Christmas party in sandals and socks with a suit on. So where the name came from is that I actually, and part of the reason why my pace was slow and behind is because in 2021, when I set off to hike the AT northbound, I had planned to do it barefoot. And I hiked 975 miles, and 940 of those were 100%, skin to dirt, barefoot. And so I got the trail name before Mountain Crossings, which is like 30 or so miles from Springer Mountain into the AT. There's this kid named Dart that I met on the trail. And he's like, "Do you have a trail name?" And I said, No, I don't. He said, "Your shoes." And I was like, "Okay, that's cool." And so he did, he took a trekking pole and knighted me with the name and everything, made it official. And so I ended up, as far as that goes, it did slow me down a lot in the early parts of the trail. And that's honestly, that's part of my reason for getting off trail in Virginia, going north, because Virginia was one of probably the middle of the state was one of the hardest sections to do barefoot. And then I went to Maine, and believe it or not, I summited Katahdin, and I did the 188 miles south completely barefoot. In 2023, when I went back, I summited Katahdin again, and I did the first 100, I think it was 126 miles south barefoot. And I ended up, I took sandals with me because of, just in case of some type of emergency injury, or, anytime I went to town, right? So I ended up, the southbound in 2023, there was a lot of flooding that spring, and like for the month of June, I swear, I think there were like 3 days it didn't pour rain. It was
miserable,
unprecedented. It was bad. So there were a couple of river crossings up there that we had to basically walk, road walk around them. And so what happened is I got to Monson, and then I didn't take a 0 day. I just kept going. And just south of town, I had to, road walk around a river crossing, and it was a 9-mile road walk, and I put my sandals on at that point. That's the first time they had been on my feet since I started. And I did the 9-mile road walk, and then I went to take my sandals off, and my feet were like, nope, we're done. Because I basically hadn't taken a day off since I started the trail. And from that point on, I made the decision in 2021 when I left the trail that if I ever came back, what I would do is just go with whatever the situation called for, and not stick to anything strictly. Can the Appalachian Trail be thru-hiked barefoot? Absolutely. Can I do it? Yes, but it's not as practical as doing it. I don't care if you're, a very experienced barefooter. It's ultimately the tools of footwear allow you to do more distance. And so when you go, 2,198 miles, that adds up over
you
time.
think?
So what happened is, southbound, I ended up, once I put the shoes on, I went from 15 miles a day to doing 20-mile days, and then my biggest day was like, I think it was 26.8, just over a marathon. And I could do more, but I absolutely have no interest in doing any more than that.
Right.
Isn't it difficult with, you get a lot of rain there. Isn't it difficult doing barefoot hiking as far as traction? I would imagine in the, being slippery barefoot hiking.
So, yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive, but it's actually an advantage. Because yes, you don't have any traction on your feet, right? But you can feel when you start to break traction. So, you can feel when you're right on the edge of breaking traction, and you can adjust. So it's kind of an advantage in that respect. And with all the rain that we had in Maine, it turned out to be an advantage for me, because there were other people who were having problems with trench foot and all kinds of stuff, because your feet would just basically stay wet the entire time. Yeah. Now, when you get down like into New Hampshire, southern Maine and New Hampshire, then the footwear definitely shines, because the rocks were, it definitely slows you down. Where it really slows you down too is on the descents, because
Oh.
I could fly going up a hill, but coming down, you got to really be careful, because one bad step and you're it's a trip to the hospital.
What about so the summits that you activated, so were most of those like right close to the trail, or did you have to kind of get off trail quite a ways? You know, it was kind of a divergence from your normal path.
So I think pretty much all of them that I did were right on the trail, because the AT is basically just mountain after mountain after mountain from one end to the other. And it crosses quite a few SOTA summits.
Oh, great.
Ariel told me before I started, he said, if you were to activate the entire trail, you could easily make Mountain Goat just on what's on the AT.
That's cool.
And so it turns out I haven't gotten to Goat yet. Sandy's ahead of me. So I started in 2022, and I'm I think 674 points in 111 activations and 87 unique summits, and 50 something of those were on the AT.
Yeah, well, I mean, Sandy may be ahead of you in points, but we have the advantage of a little bit easier than doing the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah, true.
Okay, so Al Cricker, this is Dick's K7ULM, says, which radio is the most fun for you to operate?
That's a totally subjective question. And for me personally, I enjoy the Yaesu FT818ND. I've got a KH1, I've got a KX3, I had the KX2, I've had the Lab 599. I've tried a lot of them. I've tried a few of the smaller, single band radios, or the QMX is one I'd love to try. I haven't gotten to do that yet, but personally, I enjoy the 818.
Yep, that's I'm a man of my own heart, man. That's my favorite radio too at this point, and I've tried a lot as well. So wavelength 1, I'm not sure who wavelength 1 is, but he says, did you ever get low on battery power during the long stretches?
Okay, that's a really good question. So I'm not sure how many activations I could get out of that talent cell, but believe it or not, I never ran out of battery. And the way the AT works is you're usually out on trail for anywhere from 3 to 5 days. Like the first section, the 100-mile wilderness, that was, I think it took me 7 or 8 days to get through there. But believe it or not, no, I actually did not run out of battery.
That's good. That's real good. Scout 475, the shale in Pennsylvania would be killer in those with no shoes. He thinks, yeah.
So, and let me clarify that too. This on the southbound, I did the first 126 miles or whatever, and then later on the hike, I ended up wearing sandals and switching back and forth, and the sandals ended up winning out just because the efficiency of being able to crank out the miles. But yeah, Pennsylvania is no joke.
Yeah. Okay, so my question, this is from me. This is from NJ7V. What do you think the cost is on average for somebody to do the AT top to bottom, bottom to top, however you go?
Oof. So I've watched lots of videos on this, and I think Dixie, Homemade Wanderlust, she broke it down one time, and I think it was just the raw trail itself. You could do it for like $6,500. I think you can do it. You can do it even cheaper than that if you're really, really frugal.
She was a while ago though, so with the inflation, it's got to be way more than $6,500 now.
Yeah, it's totally dependent on your individual preferences. Like you could spend an unlimited amount of money on the trail if you wanted to stay in hotels and hostels, and you can do this. It's called slack packing. I never did any slack packing, but you can have a hostel hold your backpack, and then they'll take you to a spot on the trail and arrange to pick you up further up the trail, and you can hike all day without carrying your bag. So what did it cost me? I don't want to think about it.
Okay.
Because essentially it cost me the income that I would have made had I been working the entire time, plus what I had saved up. Plus it cost me much, much more because I didn't do it straight through, right?
Yeah.
It would have been a whole lot cheaper if I had just started at the beginning and just went all the way to the end.
Yeah. Well, we're all human, right?
Yeah.
How does
All right.
how does the reprovisioning work with that? I mean, do you send packages ahead? Is there like specific places if you're going to do this that you just they're advertised as places to send provisions to that you just pick up?
So there are multiple ways to do it. With the Appalachian Trail, there are only a couple of spots where you need to really, like, you might want to send a box, right? So that's one way to do it, is you can send yourself boxes before the hike, or have someone from home sending you boxes, and they basically send them to the post office in the town. Okay. That's one way to do it. And the other is that, every at least 3 to 5 days, sometimes, every day, depending on where you are, you'll come into a town and you can just pop off, and there are lots of places where you can pretty easily hitchhike into town, and then, go to a Dollar General or a Walmart or whatever grocery store is available and resupply, and then go back out. And after a while, you get really tuned into what you like and what you don't like, and what's the lightest weight possible, and the cheapest also. And you can really get it dialed in to where you can walk in the store and be ready to come out of there in 10 minutes.
Cool. Let's see. So my other question is, okay, so this is the deal. So sometimes when Sandy's with me and we're doing a summit, she does sideband only. When she gets her goat, she's going to be 100% unique and also 100% sideband.
Wow.
So she's not, she hasn't reactivated any of the summits and won't until she's goat. But sometimes, since it's sideband, she will find it difficult to get enough contacts, even the four sometimes, depending on the band conditions, they can be difficult. So what we do sometimes to get more contacts is we spot ourselves on POTA as well as SOTA, if the summit, which in most cases it is a SOTA-POTA combo. And so so there's a couple questions. One, have you ever tried that? And also, did you log all of your SOTA summits as POTA summits as well?
So I wish I had logged them all as POTA, but I didn't log not a single one as POTA, because it turns out the entire Appalachian Trail is a POTA. So you could just activate to your heart's content. Have I ever spotted on POTA? I actually did it Saturday. So when I was at Red River Gorge. But most of the time I didn't have any issues on my hike, fortunately. But that's not always the case.
Celebrity factor, isn't it? Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, so it's not too late to, you can log them still. If you have your logs still for SOTA, you can put them in POTA.
It's actually not a bad idea.
And people would appreciate it, those who chased you, I'm sure. Even if you didn't get the activation, you didn't get the full 10 points. Because, the hunters, they only get the points if you log it, right? Only if they activate the logs. So
I guess you could export them and then just re-import them, can't you?
There's got to be a way to do it. I don't know.
Yeah. That's one of the things I love about POTA. As a hunter, you can just rely on the activator to log everything.
Yep, for sure. All right. Well, we're nearing the end here already, Scott. There weren't a lot of other questions. There's one here. Because of the difficulty of checking for deer ticks while on the trail, is Lyme disease very common with AT hikers? That's Dave again, AE9Q.
I think as far as the vast majority goes, probably not, but it is definitely a threat, and it starts in Virginia and goes all the way up to Connecticut and Massachusetts. I think probably around Massachusetts or so it may stop, because I don't remember a single tick, and it may have been the time of year too, but I didn't remember a single tick in Maine or New Hampshire. It may go all the way up to Vermont, I'm not sure, but I'd say most thru hikers it doesn't affect them, but there are definitely a percentage that it does.
Okay. Let me see. Last thing, let me share my screen. This question is along the lines of this here. I'm going to share this screen. Is there anybody that you would like to recognize in your accomplishments of doing the AT Trail and everything that you've done along the way?
So I have to say, she was definitely instrumental, and she spoiled me rotten. Like I said, she was coming to see me every 2 weeks. She surprised me when I came out of the Smoky Mountains. It was in between weeks, so I wasn't expecting her. I came out of the Smoky Mountains along I-40. It's exit 451 off of I-40. It's Water Rock Road, where you come out of the Smokies. Had been in there for 70 something miles. Came out, and she was there doing trail magic. So she got up at like 3 a.m. and left Lexington and drove down there to do trail magic and surprised me. And it was just fantastic. So yeah, I'd say I owe a lot to her for supporting me and, for having the patience, and kicking my butt too, keeping me out there, even though she wanted me home.
Yep.
Sure.
Sure.
I guess I'm really, really fortunate to have a wife who wants to spend time with me. And, I'm very grateful for her. She sent me food boxes too. That's something else. I didn't elaborate on when we were talking about the different supply methods. She did send me a lot of food boxes and was, put a little goodie or something in there to spoil me. She's fantastic.
I'm sure she is. She's a keeper for sure. Absolutely. I had the pleasure of meeting her along with you, and you guys were great there at Dayton. So, okay. Anybody else though? What about somebody else? Anybody else that you'd like to acknowledge in your efforts? Just maybe that you met along the trail or anything like that?
Oh, I mean, there were tons of people that I met along the trail that, that just make the whole thing so much more enjoyable. There was a fellow named Moses who I met him on the bus ride to go up and summit Katahdin, and I ended up hiking with him for a long ways. On a southbound hike, you don't get to see a whole lot of people. He really enhanced the hike. I don't even know where to begin. There were quite a few.
I guess the point I was trying to make with the question is that companionship is a very important thing, both on the trail, I imagine, and also through the support.
That's something else. When I took off in 2021 going northbound, I went out with the idea of just wanting to be solo, right? I didn't want to associate with anybody. I just wanted to go out there and spend time in the woods. And I ended up meeting people just right out of the gate. Everybody's kind of in their happy place. And there were people, that did trail magic early on. And it kind of restored my faith in humanity. That sounds kind of corny or whatever, but I was really kind of down in the dumps and not a huge fan of human beings. And
yeah.
And it kind of, that time out there doing without all of the comforts of home. And when you strip all the everyday stresses away from people, you see who they really are. And it's a beautiful thing. It really is.
Perfect. Cool. All right, Dan, do you have anything else? Any other questions for him?
I just can imagine the fun of meeting so many different people from different walks of life, and they're out there just enjoying that kind of an environment. I mean, I've seen some videos and things like that, and the people just always amaze me how interesting and cool they are.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Yeah. So I'm just gonna let us all kind of wrap it up then. Dan, those are your last words? Do you have anything else to add? And then
I'm good.
You're good. And then I just wanted to thank you, Scott, so much. Scott 75's last word is if this talk about the AT is interesting to people new to it, I highly recommend reading AWOL on the
AWOL.
Appalachian Trail, AWOL on the Appalachian Trail by Dave Miller. All right, good. Thanks for recommending that. I think we did good, Scott. I think we made it happen. It was a very, very interesting story. I know there's all kinds of caveats that we didn't cover, but I think we got the gist of it, and you did great. I really, really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Charlie. It's a huge honor to be here.
Yeah, cool. All right, so we're going to end the stream then. Thanks to everybody else for being here and listening, either in now or in the future. And Scott, hang on, don't hang up, don't click on any buttons until we come around the next time. All right, thanks everybody. We'll catch you on the next one.